All right, let's go ahead and call tonight's meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, all members of council are present. Do I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Hearing a motion.
No, that was me, but.
What?
That was me.
Oh, Counselor Polling has moved to approve the agenda. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Counselor Miller. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Public comments. Is there anyone here tonight that would like to comment on anything not on tonight's agenda? Marissa? Please step forward. State your name and the city you live in for the record.
Hello,
Welcome.
Marissa Jacobs with Scappoose. Thank you. So I thank you for letting me speak tonight. Just coming out of your work session, I'd like to share some thoughts specifically regarding Measure 109, psilocybin. So I want to thank Councilor Greisen as well as Councilor Santiago for really pushing the maximum amount of restrictions and regulations that we can put in place for our city. As the conversation was and how I've been talking with others within our community, there is so much unknown about Measure 109. And there's a lot of contradiction, as was spoke about during the working session. And it makes a lot of people very uneasy. It makes me very uneasy. And several weeks ago, when it was brought up to defer and put a moratorium for 2 years and it did not pass, it was very upsetting. We have Clascanine as well as St. Helens who have it on the ballot on a moratorium for 2 years. And when I reached out to public officials in St. Helens and asked them why they did it, was because there is so much confusion. I feel like that really was a missed opportunity here for us because we're trying to regulate something and put parameters in place when there's so much confusion and something could slip in and it could be the detriment to our town. I pulled up the numbers. There was, in terms of Columbia County and the passing on Measure 109, I think it's really important when we talk about majority votes. 15,369 people voted yes, 15,144 people voted no. That's a difference of 225 votes. To me, that does not constitute a whopping majority win. That is really close to a 50-50 split. So while we say the people voted yes, it wasn't a landslide by any means. And then you couple that with all the confusion, I feel it's a very slippery slope. So I just want to thank you very much for really pushing and putting as many guardrails around this until it is actually worked out between OHA and our legislature. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else would like to comment? Seeing none, we'll move forward to the consent agenda, the September 19th, 2022 council work session and council meeting minutes and the October 3rd, 2022 city council meeting minutes. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve the minutes as presented.
Hearing a motion to approve the consent agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Hearing a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Old business, standing committees, code and bylaw changes, Scappoose Parks and Rec and EDC resolutions. Assistant Manager Isaac Butman.
Looks like we're doing the ordinance first.
Yes.
Alrighty. So last meeting, we talked about a couple of items in a work session format. Hopefully tonight will go much quicker. So before you use ordinance 905 and ordinance amending municipal code title 204, essentially we're adding in a process through which complaints about committees and committee members are handled, how those are handled. Based on the last meeting, staff made a number of changes to the ordinance. Removed some of the language from the ordinance that council asked to be moved into the bylaws as it was more appropriate for that kind of an item. That was the language around the number of absences needed to trigger a request for removal. We did not add the language clarifying how applications are distributed. We'll be putting that into policy instead. We added more flexibility to the delegation for the mediators so that there's more ability to choose whoever's free, or if the mayor wants to do that on their own, to leave that a little more open-ended. And that's pretty much it. Those were the 3 changes that were asked for the ordinance. So attached is the new draft language. Any questions? I guess
All right.
public hearing, right?
Thank you. Yeah, so we're on the first reading, so there's going to be a public hearing. We're going to go ahead and open up the public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to speak on ordinance number 905? Marissa, please step forward, state your name and the city you live in for the record.
Hello.
Back.
Hello again. Marissa Jacobs, Scappoose. So I'm speaking overall in favor. So thank you very much for the healthy conversation. Last session, had an opportunity to review this as well as with some of my peers who are heavily vested. And overall, we are in agreement with a lot of the changes that I've made. There is one slight area I would like your attention to and would like consideration. When we talk about Article 4, Article 5, Organization and Structure, Section 1, Membership, and you go to point B, its members shall live, work, or have significant interest in parks and recreation opportunities in the city of Scappoose. I feel it would behoove us to clearly define what has significant interest in parks and recreation opportunities in the city of Scappoose. What does have significant interest mean? I think that can be very broad, and going back to what I provided in public comment last time is that I think it's truly important, especially when we talk about these committees that are impacting our town. It's really the people who live here. So the more involvement we encourage people who are here versus people who don't live here and don't really have as well of a vested interest, I think that would be for the best. Or another suggestion is to really define what the city of, define the parameters of city of Scappoose. That's my comment.
So are those on the bylaw changes then, or the ordinance?
Those are the
They're
bylaw
in the bylaw.
changes. Yeah,
Bylaw
that's
change.
not the ordinance.
Okay, my apologies. I wasn't really sure how I was able to get that in.
That's,
So,
well, it's in now. So thank you
Right.
very much. All right, are there anybody else that would like to comment on during the public hearing? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and go on council. You have any questions, council? This is specifically on ordinance number 905.
Mayor. I did get a chance to talk to Kara, which is the chair for the Parks and Rec.
Vice Chair.
Vice.
Oh, sorry. Yes, Chair. I'm
Chair.
like, I see Kim's name on there.
And so she did take a look at the changes and she liked them. She would have wished that she would have a copy of it sent over to them, or at least her, so she can review it. And if we can do that in the future, that they would like that. So her and I did agree that we were going to meet prior to the meetings, and then I'm going to give her updated on anytime Parks and Recs is on the agenda, just to give her heads up. And also, guess for now I just have something else, but that's it. Oh, and just that basically she just would like the ordinance to review. That's it.
Oh,
President?
me.
Yeah.
I just wanted to mention, I think it's, a lot of people want information or see information. It's accessible, it's posted online. So I think that it's great that you're taking full advantage of being the liaison between Kara. So perhaps maybe it's you that would send her these things or point her in the direction if they're on the agenda, like you had just
Right.
mentioned. So I'm not sure if that's a directive for staff. I think that's
No, just on these ordinance itself, the changes, that's all.
okay. We're looking at just the Parks Committee,
No, this is just ordinance number 905.
which applies to all.
All committees, yeah.
Yes.
This is the overarching.
Thank you. So I will not say anything because it's not specific to this. That's fine.
Any other comments?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Miller?
I do want to clarify based on Council President Grison's comment too, that all of this is online. And so it would just be a matter of directing her online where she can read through this too in the future.
Okay, so what I'm looking for is a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Miller,
I move that council adopts ordinance 905, an ordinance amending municipal code title 2.04, council meetings, modifying section 2.04.080, appointments in section 2.04.110, committees as written.
hearing a motion by Councilor Miller, do I have a second?
A second.
Hearing a second by Councilor Santiago. We'll be going on to first reading, ordinance number 905, an ordinance amending Scappoose Municipal Code Title 2.04, modifying section 2.04.080, appointments, and 2.04110 committees. So now on first reading, it will come back at our next regularly scheduled council meeting for second reading and a vote. Next item, resolution number 22-19, a resolution rescinding resolution number 20-17 and establishing the bylaws for the Scappoose Parks and Recreation Committee.
Mayor and council, again, at the last meeting, we had a nice long discussion about the bylaws changes. What's before you tonight is the new set of bylaws, the new proposed set of bylaws for the Scappoose Parks and Recreation Committee. We did make a number of changes as asked. We changed the language relating to quarterly meetings to reflect that this is a baseline number of meetings and clarify around the fact that the committees can meet more frequently. Council asked that the committees meet only if there are agenda items or assigned project, and clarified that committees may share information between regularly scheduled meetings. Staff added language to the committee responsibilities and objectives, clarifying the committees can act more generally to support council goals. And we removed section G as requested and language that was or is similar to quote unquote as directed. We ensured that the responsibilities and objectives were more flexible generally as requested. We added definition about the types of numbers of absences that can cause a recommendation for removal to be sent to council. We removed the requirement that the chair and the vice chair reside inside city limits. Clarified that the quorum is a majority of voting members and that if a quorum cannot be achieved, committees can still meet but cannot make decisions. That's part of public meeting law. It's been in question a few times. We clarified that committees shall vote to create subcommittees and clarified that committees shall report to council at least annually and as frequently as quarterly, and that the chair or their designee should probably be preparing those reports on committee activities. And there were some minor scrivener's errors in terms of numbering, formatting, et cetera, that have been corrected. Are there any questions about the changes that were made or were not made or anything new to note?
Yeah, I have a concern, and it's, I've always been under the impression that the people on the committee, the majority of them had to live in the city, within the city limits. And apparently that's not the case, the way it's set up. I was even told that by people that I was the person designated for the at that time I lived out of the city. And so I served thinking in that capacity for a long time. I really think the majority, if we have 9 members on the committee, I think the majority, probably at least 6 of them, should live in the city limits. I mean, when you get right down to it, you know, they're the ones who are going to have to represent the public who are going to pay the bills. And I think we need input from everybody. They should be voting members. But I also think that the majority of the people in that committee should be from the city, live in the city limits. That's my take on it. My recommendation would be to put that number at 6 tonight. I'm not sure why I said 6, but I want 5 didn't seem like 5 enough. 8 seemed like too many. So, but good to me. Anyway, I just think we need to. It is a city committee, and their recommendations to obligate the rest of the community to some financial debt, and so. I think we need to have the majority of the people on that committee live in the city.
Councilor Salzman.
Counselor McHugh, is there a place in the proposed language that you're recommending that we add an amendment before we vote so that we're all on the same page?
Section 1A.
And you would like it to say what again?
So I think you're looking at section 1.
Article
B.
5. Article 5, section
Article
1 under
5,
membership.
64 in the packet.
64.
Membership.
What? I've got it here.
Members shall live, work, or have significant interest in parks and recreation opportunities in the city of Scappoose. Your recommendation would be at least 6 members shall live inside the city limits of Scappoose. And 3 members may live within the school district.
I
Is
don't
there
think
some
there's- I don't
bound?
think there's,
Yeah.
it just basically says they have to have an interest.
Yeah. This is parks.
Yeah.
Mayor, as having the conversation with Kara and she knows her members or her committee members, bless you. Some concerns were that there was not enough of even the current members that are in the committee that would qualify for that. And that would make her chair forever. So,
So that, no, we're allowing anyone. to-
right. No, well, I'm just saying or just anybody to be in the committee. So where their concern was limiting the city limits. Maybe like you were saying, maybe school district or something I would be
So I
more.
think that currently there are 3 members on the Parks Committee that live outside the city. That would be Mike Sykes, AJ Duran, and then
Paul.
Paul. I think it's this pretty close to the same. Yeah, so I tend to agree, and this is because these are the people who are making recommendations that either directly or indirectly pay the taxes because they live within the city limits. But I also think that we're in a unique situation that we don't have a parks district. A lot of communities have a parks district. We used to, it was the school district within Columbia County. It didn't include Multnomah County, part of Columbia County. I don't think it included Sauvie Island either. Yeah. But to say that that old district would be worth 3 other members, I think that gives a interest to parks within it. So I tend to agree with Mr. Pugh that maximum of 3 members from the Parks Committee, maybe from outside the city limits, as long as they reside within the school district.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
may I offer some insight? So I think as far as it goes, sorry, I can't talk tonight. Representing the city of Scappoose interests and the citizens of Scappoose within the city limits, I think just the majority of the members is what it needs to say. And to Councilor McHugh's point about those that live within the city limits being represented, I don't know that we accomplish that by saying that it can be within a district also. I would just leave it at that there has to be a majority of members that live inside the city limits of Scappoose. That's my suggestion.
I tend to gravitate towards the word majority because some of these committees don't even have the maximum amount of people. And this whole conversation makes me extremely itchy because you just mentioned 3 people that are very active on the Parks and Rec Committee. And to think that there would be somebody else who would be just as active and just as dedicated to the work, and you would tell them no. I have a very hard time with that. We're going to get nowhere if we're limiting dedicated community members. So I have a hard time saying the city of Scappoose. I feel more comfortable saying the Scappoose School District, but that's just my personal opinion when it comes to specifically the Parks and Rec Committee.
Mr. Mayor. Would also lean towards we wanted to go towards the direction of a majority, but I think that restricting it completely to inside city limits restricts the amount of, involvement we can have. We also you know, it's up to the mayor to choose those people, right? And so, and the council to approve it. So, I mean, there are some other layers to this that would help keep that, you know, within a boundary. But I think that we have the opportunity to have, you know, people that are, that bring their professionalism to that, you know, committee. And I think we need to leave that as open as possible in order to do that, personally.
I'm okay with majority. That's not a problem at all, with me, but I do think that, majority of the people in that committee should be in the city. I love the people from outside the city. Nobody's suggestion they shouldn't be on the committee. I hope you understand that. That we had a couple of tremendous chairmen at one time that were way outside the city, you know, Dave Powers and Mike Sykes and people like that. They need to be involved, but I do think bottom line is most of the people in that committee should be in city. And where the others come from, I don't know that we even want to put a limit on that necessarily. But if you want to, fine, but I'm okay with the majority of the people in the committee. I'll let Isaac work out the wording, whatever is proper, that the majority of the people on the committee in the city.
I think we could move to approve that just with an amendment tonight.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just a resolution.
Can I? Can we try to land on a number? I know that we like the word majority. The reason is that as the committee grows and shrinks, if it gets to 5 members and it says a majority, the difficulty for staff is determining what the word majority is. It 5 of the 9 total members? Is it 3 of the 5?
I think we'd want to write it in a way that it's saying that of the 9 members, 5 must live within the city limits.
But we might not
He's
have. 9
asking if we end up in
Yeah,
a
but that's what I'm
situation
saying.
where,
That's why I'm saying we're not using the word majority, because I think currently,
So what you're saying is that if we had a fully staffed, however you want to put it, committee, 5 of the 9 were within city limits, then we lost some members. If the ratio were to be off, that would be
so say we
fine.
had 9, we had 5 from inside the city and 4 from, 2 people from the city got elected to the city council. Now it was that, it wouldn't throw it off. It would just mean that the 2 people that got appointed would have to reside inside the city.
Okay, well, then here's a question then too. And I guess we'd have to go back and look, but if we actually would that actually mean members being pushed off
No.
one of the committees? Okay.
So
On my appointments, I've been limiting it to 3.
Wait.
And it's not and this is the voting members, not your ex official members.
Correct. No, I know we're talking about the actual membership. I'm just asking if we had a committee where you actually had, you know, far more people who lived outside of city limits, which is possible since there were no rules about that.
And this is specifically to the Parks Committee.
Okay, well, and I guess that would be my other request or question is, I think the second we start having really different rules for different committees, it starts to get administratively confusing.
Well, on these standing committees, I mean, when you're looking at 50-year committee, that's an ad hoc committee,
Correct.
totally different.
But the next tab
So the
is
budget
economic
committee, you can't be
development.
outside the city limits to serve on.
Oh, right, yeah.
You can't be outside the city limits to serve on.
Oh, that's not unusual of a requirement. We're just saying that we just like to have as much uniformity between the
Yeah,
committees as
uniformity, I think
possible.
it's At least 5 members shall be.
So for both
yeah,
though, okay.
shall Be residents within the city limits of Scapa.
And as of right now, if this were to go through, then we would just leave them as is and just simply implement this moving forward, like essentially you'd be kind of grandfathered in if you were
Yeah,
already on the
yeah, yeah.
committee.
I think so. That's how I'd recommend it.
So we could modify B to say, at least 5 members shall live in the city, within the boundary of the city of Scappoose. And then up to 4, they live outside.
And you can just say it one way and it covers
Okay.
it.
Yeah.
I'm not in favor.
I'd like to I'll work through this and that's perfectly fine, but please help me in understanding. If we have 5 committee members that live in the city, 3 of them take off, they move. What happens to the committee? Because now we have to recruit, which we only have 2 city folks on that committee at that time. Would they be able to function as a committee?
Yeah, well, that's why we're not saying majority. We're saying of the 9 members, 5 must be. We're not saying majority. If we
What if-
said
But we're down to 2 people.
they would still function.
Yeah, they can
And
They would still function. They would still be able to vote with a majority of
When you
of two.
added new members,
But as you add members, they would need to be,
correct?
to get to 9, you'd have to add 3 from, at least 3 from inside the city.
So that's what it is. It's on the recruitment backfill portion that we're trying to discuss. And that makes fine sense to me, but I think it has to be accepted and understood amongst council that we would only be recruiting and or accepting committee positions from city addressed residents.
For certain times when you're recruiting, there would be points where you would have to automatically deny applications if we did not have enough members from inside the city. They would get auto denied because they would not be from inside the city.
And then I would just say of trends, and maybe the last 2 years isn't a great snapshot of what trends are. But what has been our recruitment of new committee members who we know live within the city? Because my understanding is the majority of new committee members are actually not committee members who live in the city. So we're getting more interest from people outside of the city limits rather than from inside the city limits. And so I'm just trying to work this out that we don't have to readdress this come 6 months, a year from now. It's that we can get this right. We can get it correct at this point in time. So I'm just open for dialogue. I'm just looking for guidance. Thank you.
You're not
Yeah, I
wrong.
think it's clear.
Thanks, Pete. Appreciate that. Very informative.
Recruitment is very difficult. It has been for the 2 years I've been with the city. You're not incorrect that the majority of new members have been from outside the city. I don't really have anything more to add to that.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. I appreciate that, Isaac.
But the whole idea is that was to happen, is that we would be able.
I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
So my concern is recruitment and not having enough committee members. I don't agree with the city limits. I'm just wanted to point that out there. Maybe school district address, I'm not sure, but I think we're limiting ourselves if we restrict to city limits. And maybe it's not a number, maybe it's a racial of number of members. You know, maybe that the ratio of this to that. Maybe that would work better than a number because it seems to be confusing. I mean, it confuses me. So those are my thoughts.
Mr. Mayor. After hearing everything, I think that we just go back to the current wording. We leave it open and non-restrictive because of my biggest concern is that we're restricting it so much that it's going to be difficult going forward. I understand that we can put numbers on there. We can make a restriction of this many people have to be inside the city limits. But again, it comes back to the mayor and the city council to decide that going forward. And I like the current wording and I say we continue with that.
I think the big question was the definition of significant interest. Yeah, and what does that mean?
Objective.
Yeah, it's very subjective.
I mean, I'd just like to point out again that the mayor, whomever that is, sitting in that chair and whoever puts the name on the consent agenda, it's up to council to decide that and approve it or not based upon the application that's put before council and the mayor. So, I mean, I'll give an example. We have a local election happening. And there are people who have a significant interest in the local election that live nowhere near the city of Scappoose boundary. And so I think that it's contradictive to say, you know, in certain circumstances, you can have a significant interest in this, but you can't have a significant interest in that. And, you know, again, I just go back to JJ and Paul and Michael, and I would hate for one other person to show an interest and have be invested in our parks and recreation and be denied for that. But that, again, is up to the mayor and the council. So I move to leave it.
Okay, my only
Thank you.
counterpoint would be that those same people don't get to vote in the upcoming local election. They can campaign and their public input. So they do have the ability of having significant interest. I do kind of like the majority, but I'm good to go with whatever council wants to do. Mostly because, well, I probably won't be making any more appointments this year. and it's not gonna be for me to decide. So for me, it's whatever council wants to do. I think majority, and it's because having a significant interest and having a vested interest in that your tax dollars are going to it and you're recommending tax dollars is different than lobbying. And we don't give people that live outside the city limits a vote. If there's a local city ordinance, I doubt the gas tax would have passed if everyone from St. Helens got a vote on it. They're the majority paying for it.
Probably beyond St. Helens, but yeah.
Whomever's paying for it, right?
But yes, but either way, I mean, at the end of the day, the mayor under the charter has the appointment ability, so they can, whomever it is, will have that self-regulatory if they choose.
Mr. Mayor,
Counselor Pauling.
I move that council adopt resolution 2219, a resolution rescinding resolution 20-17 and establishing the bylaws for the Scappoose Parks and Recreation Committee as written.
Hearing a motion by Counselor Pauling, is there a second?
Second.
Hearing a second, is there any discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Counselor Miller.
I would actually like to discuss this bullet point about staff clarified that the committee shall vote to create subcommittees. I do have a little bit of concern about that. Just because of the legal implications and all, I mean, do we have enough staff to staff subcommittees? What are the public records, public meeting laws, and are we dedicating legal
No,
resources?
a subcommittee would be a public meeting if a majority of the subcommittee shows up. So the rule with advisory committees to another body is that they're public meetings. So they would need to be staffed if they started having subcommittee meetings.
But that's why they
Mayor.
would have to go to council for approval because they would require staff time and various other things. And that was not in there before. And that's why we updated that language so that you all would be aware of when that was happening and sign off on when resources were committed to it.
So I guess this is a clarification piece then. So council is still going to have to approve the creation of subcommittees. Okay. All right. And then also the next bullet point that follows, staff clarified that committees shall report to council at least annually as frequently as quarterly. So I just want to get this on the record that the intent here is not to limit the Parks Committee to be able to come in front of us at any time to update us. This says as frequently as quarterly. When I read that, I think, oh, they can only come talk to council quarterly. I just want to confirm that they can come and talk to us at any time and that we expect them to come and talk to us at any time, that there's a change that impacts or something significant that
So
we need to know about.
yes.
This is a separate mechanism. So it was asked that there be included in this an extra level of reporting.
Right.
Where the committees come and specifically say at least once, up to 4 times a year, here's what we've been doing, here's how things are going. And the reason for the 4 is that it is possible that some committees choose to meet only quarterly. And so they might not have more than 4 updates. They can always come before council. This is specifically to elicit this report on the accomplishments, concerns, issues related to the committee specifically, so that it kind of maintains that dialogue at a bare minimum.
It was
They can
to
always come further.
increase communication for council's
Preference would be to
request.
be twice and.
Well,
The ask from council was 4, and we just weren't sure.
Mine was at least.
Yeah.
twice.
Here.
Yeah.
Again, Kara and I had a conversation and it was clear. I mean, she didn't mind. I think the last meeting it was brought up to, she come up to the council quarterly and she thought that was great. I even ensured her that as we meet twice a month, that I would be giving the council updates on the Park and Rec every time. So it's technically it would be twice a month. I mean, and she can come on her own or she can, Teams in or just send a report to us. But we're working on the communication as the liaison for Park and Rec.
Would you feel more comfortable if it said twice a year instead of at least once?
Yeah, I think at least, just because I think the bottom should be twice a year, not once a year. I think that that creates better communication.
And then would you want to remove the up to quarterly and just say
No, I
at
would-
least twice a year?
I would still have the quarterly because that's 4 times. At least.
I guess for me, I do see confusion where it makes it seem like they can't come more than 4
Yeah.
times.
Even with currently how it's written, it's like,
So I'm just trying to get at the wording of what you were thinking. I feel comfortable with saying coming at least twice in the year, but leaving off the quarterly part
yeah, because then at
It-
least twice, and that leaves the upside.
of whatever.
Minimum,
Yeah.
minimum better than at least.
Minimum of 2 times, that'd be great,
Minimum
yeah.
Twice
Minimum of
annual
twice annual,
reports
yeah.
to city council.
Yeah,
And again, just to say, they can come as.
Yeah, that's why we're trying to.
what were you saying? We're setting the floor, not the ceiling?
Yeah. In a way that as frequently as quarterly sounds like a ceiling.
So if I can adjust my suggested motion,
As long as who seconded it?
I did.
As long as council president seconded, used to your friendly amendment.
would be to add the changes that we just,
A friendly amendment.
of changing it to the minimum to twice a year.
At least twice a year. Period.
I second my second.
All right. So the motion now is amended, includes a report for the Scappoose Parks and Rec activities shall be made to council at least twice a year, period. Nothing about, that sounds like a cap. The rest of it is as read.
And I just want to, I'm trying to empathize with people that do have a significant interest in Scappoose. And I want them to feel, and that significant interest is determined by the mayor, and then the council if it makes the agenda, but that those beyond city limits people, I mean, we have people who even chair committees that don't live within city limits, that they feel as though they can have a part in their community. And so that I empathize with people that are willing to help us. And I don't want them to feel turned away by where they live if it is determined by the mayor and council that they have a significant interest.
All right, any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Are you opposed?
Yes.
Okay. All right, number 4, resolution 22-20, a resolution rescinding resolution 20-01 and establishing the bylaws of the Scappoose Economic Development Committee.
Mayor and council, these bylaws are almost exactly the same, excepting the purpose statements. So the changes that were made are exactly the same. The language is exactly the same, except for, again, the purpose. Are there any questions about these particular bylaws or the Economic Development Committee?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Miller.
I would just ask that the same wording changes be made to these.
He was writing it down.
Mhm.
All right, they're exactly the same. Do I have a motion?
No, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I move council adopt resolution 22-20, a resolution rescinding resolution 20-01 and establishing the bylaws for the Scappoose Economic Development Committee with amendments to section I, as previously discussed.
Which would be at least, that they would report at least twice a year.
I will second.
Hearing a second. Motion made by Councilor Osowski, seconded by Councilor Polling. Any discussion?
I feel out of both the committees, this one very strongly about the membership. We had some people speaking to us during our work session who have a very vested interest in Scappoose with OMIC and PCC, and especially when it comes to regards into economic development. I would hope that those voices would be welcomed on our committee, and I think that they are some of the experts and people leading us in the right direction for economic development. So thank you for leaving those.
All right,
And I will vote for this because I think they all should be the same.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. New business. Wastewater treatment phase one engineering additional scope discussion report only. Mr. Sukow.
Mayor and council, good evening. So we wanted to take this opportunity tonight to give you a status update on the wastewater treatment plan. As you know, we've been working to get through the engineering, which has been a sizable project. On the line, we have Austin Rambin, who has been the design engineer for formerly Murray Smith. Now they are Consor. Sorry, it's new to us, very new, just happened. And so he's going to run us through a PowerPoint of the status of where we're at, and then we can answer any questions that you might have. Austin, are you with us?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dave. Assume you can hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Good deal. Good evening, everyone. Austin Rambin here, like Dave said, with Contour Engineers, formerly Murray Smith. And I'm here to give an update on the phase one wastewater treatment plant improvements project. This is our brief agenda for this presentation. We'll go over the initial project elements and budget, the updated project elements and budget, biosolids dryer, next steps, and then answer any questions that you have. Although feel free to interject at any time if you have any questions as I'm going through this presentation. So this slide shows the initial project elements along with the budget. The graphic here is from our proposal, and then we got under contract. I think it was within the next week or so that the aeration basin liner started failing. And so we had to switch gears, and working with Kevin came up with an interim aeration basin design, assisted with construction and a little bit in operation. So these project elements have changed a little bit. Our total engineering fee to date is a little over $1.1 million, and that includes the amendments for the interim aeration basin. So the next slide will show our updated project elements budget. I'll start with the changes that came out of the facility plan amendment. So we met with Dave and Kevin, went through the facility plan, put our heads together and came up with a few additional unit processes that we've included with the project. And these include a grip chamber to go along with the headworks, to keep grip from moving downstream and destroying mechanical equipment. A new blower building with electrical room for the new aeration basin. A redundant UV disinfection system to give Kevin 2 systems so he can take one offline for cleaning. A biosolids dryer, which we'll talk more about in a minute. The need for a new electrical service to power all these additional electrical loads. And a more robust SCADA system to allow for plant automation. And so the, sorry, I paused for too long. The updated engineering fees for the added elements are approximately 1.6 million. So the amendment request is right around 500K. So moving on to the biosolids dryer, city brought to our attention that they're losing some of their land application fields after next summer, and asked us to look at different biosolids dryer technologies to create Class A biosolids. And they made Class A biosolids can be used by the public like any other fertilizer or soil amendment product. So we looked at 4 alternatives. Like I said, and BioForce-Tech's BioDryer, which is the picture shown here, has the lowest capital and operating costs out of everything that we looked at. It's very energy efficient because it uses the waste energy present in the solids bacteria as a heat source for up to 50% of the drying capacity prior to needing an additional heat source. And so that also offers operational flexibility for Kevin. This is a batch dryer system, and if Kevin decides that he needs to run a batch faster, he can use the additional heat source Instead of using the solids to heat themselves up and run a batch much faster and fit more batches into a week. So looking at this, there's a 12-month lead time for manufacturing, and the grant funding deadline is summer 2024. So we're recommending pre-procurement of this equipment. Go ahead and get it ordered and have it here when the contractor's here. Contractor's on site with his notice to proceed. That way he can get it installed, because Kevin's gonna need to use this right away, right after it gets here and gets installed. So the estimated equipment cost is 1.66 million right now. That includes a lot of ancillary equipment, like the heat exchanger, boiler, odor scrubber, conveyors, sludge hopper, etc. So the next steps for the project are to continue with 60% design, which we're in the middle of right now. Procure the biosolids dryer equipment if that's acceptable by the city. Then we're looking at bidding during July of next year, with contractor notice to proceed in the August timeframe next year. Now I'll answer any questions that you might have.
Rosa.
This is Counselor Greisen. I'm sorry, it was a little bit muffly at times to understand you, and perhaps I've missed this in a previous presentation, but I'm just curious what took us from moving from Class B to Class A, or were we at C? I don't remember for the biosolids.
Been at Class B for a very long time.
Right,
Class A will give us reduced volume and more opportunity to
okay,
get rid of Class A biosolids all year instead of summer.
sure. To spread, the A can
They
be,
can pretty much go anywhere, parks.
okay, okay. Thank you.
I believe, Clean Water Services is already Class A in some packages.
A lot of different methods. Other cities, they package it and sell it. I think out in city, right at Home Depot.
Wow.
Just have to label it.
Thank you. And we can make money off that, correct? Like when you're,
Potential.
And yeah, some cities do.
okay,
We need to get rid of it first. Booked on it.
We also don't create a lot of volume, correct, in the sense of commodities of scale. I mean, we could sell it to a distributor or something like that, but for us to,
We don't have the volume. We
Yeah.
don't have the volume.
right, exactly. So, in regards to the solids dryer, what's the warranty that we would be getting?
I
Austin,
believe
Austin, do you know that?
Yeah, I believe it's a year.
I assume that there will be maintenance agreements that we can buy for the rest of our lives.
Probably.
I sold equipment, not this kind of equipment, but where you.
We looked at one of these,
Extended warranty.
looked at one of these units up in, Yakima. Casino up there. They've been running it for years. It's Z maintenance and it couple times a year. Seems to be.
What is our, what are we paying currently to distribute through permitting and everything else to distribute the current biosolids?
Typically is around 15,000.
So we basically reduce that down to nothing because we'd be able to use it elsewhere, or are we still going to?
Goal is to, making money off of it would be great, but realistically, I think our people who pay rates for sewer get it.
So this is the first time I'm seeing this. And so can you, in one sentence, I'm not sure if it's gonna be you or kind of tell me what this is about, and where it's located? Because I can't tell by the map. And that's my first question right now.
So we have at the treatment plant down the road, we currently have a facility that's 10,000 square feet that we store Class B biosolids in. It's kind of a cake form.
Mhm.
We store it all year. once a year we'll end apply. You've heard about it or smelled the odor. So with this new process, it's a greater pathogen reduction. There's more vector control with it. There's more availability for us to reduce the volume substantially. Not have to just get rid of it. Time of year, we get rid of the year, so it gives us more space out of the facility, more control.
So it's this particular machine that it costs 1.6 million, 1.66 million. And it doesn't, I saw somewhere that the total would be, was that 6.12? That's the initial budget? Are we looking at additional funds?
That 6.1 was for the initial of all of the improvements we were doing, not counting this. This project is a separate standalone project. That's why if you look at the total, now it's at 12.5 just for this phase one with the biosolids dryer in it. So by the time we're said and done, there's going to be a phase two that's going to come back around, and with the uncertain market, you don't know where those numbers are going to land. That's what we're trying to work through right now. So within the next meeting or two, I'll be coming before you again with some requests to procure this equipment and the expansion to their contract, because we've added more scope of work to the engineering. That's why he was mentioning the extra about 500,000. So we'll be at 1.6 in engineering to get us through phase one, including the dryer. Plus, we're going to need to get this dryer purchased to have it in time to meet our, for one, lack of fields that we're going to be facing, two, to get it installed in a timely fashion that meets up with the operation of the plant.
And is this coming out city budget? And
Part of it will be budget, and that's why we're not asking you for this tonight. I want to work through the dollars and cents, because with these numbers coming in above through the ARPA funds, we're receiving 1.9 towards this project. It's looking like it's going to be in the low to mid twos. So that's what I want to work through before I come before you, is either we're going to have to borrow it through our SRF loan, which I've already talked to them, and they said that they're getting used to it because everybody's facing these high prices. Excuse me. So it's not a big deal to increase the loan if we need to. We obviously don't want to, but I want to work through and make sure we can't just fund this with our own budget, because there is a good probability of that.
it seems like it doubled from 6 million to now you're saying about 12 million?
Well, all along, this project has been hovering at the 18 to 20 million when we're said and done. We've broke it into phases so that we can afford to do this, because to come
Okay.
out of the gate, build it all wasn't an option. So we're phasing it in a way that the city can afford the rate increases combined with the loans and a reasonable construction time frame to keep the plant operational, because you can't just take it offline, build this stuff. You have to phase it in a way that we can keep it operating while it's under remodel, if you will.
Another thing about the pricing too is that initially there were more than 2 phases, and then the project scope changed. We needed things sooner than we thought, and the phasing changed. So even though the total amount isn't drastically different, the chunks are bigger because there's only 2 phases now.
You haven't been here through the whole duration of it, but most of the council has. We weren't even planning on doing anything with the aeration basin when the liner failed a year and a half ago. That brought that to the forefront. That's been a very expensive enhancement, addition to this project.
Just to add a little bit, Councilor Greisen, you said we could possibly make money on the back end of this, or just?
I wouldn't bank
I don't
on
really
that,
think
to be
so,
honest.
yeah.
with you.
You were kidding?
Some people can, we can't.
Okay.
It was for the record.
It's possible, but I wouldn't be banking on that. What is giving us the option is a greater ability to dispose of it. We can go to more fields out on the dike, say, or we could find a nursery that would be willing to take it, or whatever. It gives us more options. Otherwise, it has to be on certified locations previously arranged with DEQ and Monet.
Thank you.
I have something, but
All right.
Peter's first. For my more important.
Just piggybacking on that last point, and I've seen this in other jurisdictions as well, it's getting harder and harder to find fields in order to put this Class B out. And it's getting harder to get the state in order to greenlight new fields, and some of the past uses that were allowed are just getting more and more restrictive. And so that $15,000 number that they mentioned, as we lose fields and have to go further and further out shipping wise, that cost just will keep going up.
I have a couple questions. I only taught second grade, so my math isn't great. Bear with me. But on this, in our packet, on one side, on the updated project elements and budget, when it has all of these line items right here, for the Class A biosolids solids dryer, it says 2.34 million. But on the back, it says,
So one is the equipment itself.
Okay.
The larger amount is we have to retrofit the site.
okay,
We have to build a building to encompass it, heating, gas sources, electrical, SCADA. There's a lot of components that go to feed it. There's air circulation systems that need to be around it. That's the difference between the two
Okay.
numbers.
so I'm gonna have Counselor Pauling check. Does that say 2.34? Okay. And so let's say the cost goes up to 20,000 a year
For disposal.
for disposal. It's 117 years before we would ever, what?
ROI.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand budget wise. Like I said, I'm not great at math, so thanks for bearing with me. But if we're putting out $20,000 a year to dispose of Class B solids, are we asking ourselves, are we willing to pay $2.34 million when we wouldn't be spending even that much in 117 years?
Guess I'm not really following because the cost of disposal is what we call cost of doing business. That's an expenditure you just have to pay to dispose of it. We don't have choices of where it goes
Sure.
and what we do.
Yeah.
with it. There's certain fields here. So I'm trying to follow there because I don't what you're getting at. The expenses that we're paying are out of pocket expenses, so to speak, to build it, not even looking at any long-term operational. This is just purely to get it in place and get it operational.
$2.34 million.
Correct. Give or take. We don't know that. This is still engineer's estimate numbers because the bids haven't come in and the design isn't. complete.
So my question is, why don't we just continue to pay $15,000 to $20,000 a
We're
year?
losing our fields.
Thank you.
2 years, that will no longer be an option.
And there's not an option, someone had mentioned going further and finding fields, that we'll lose those too. It's not worth the,
No, that's kind of what Peter was just saying, is that this process is going away. You are losing your ability. What a lot of cities are doing is trucking it all the way to Arlington.
yeah, I just need to hear that. Thank you.
They're paying a really high rate to do that. So we're fortunate to have been able to have done what we've done for so many years. But with the future, that is going away.
We have to pay for a landfill to take this soil. I mean, it's not soil, probably cake. I mean, would you describe it as cake? Okay. So if we're having to, which would have to be done by truck because you can't get trains. And so it would be all the costs associated with trucking it to a dump that will take it, which is Arlington, and then the fees that they charge. Because it used to be that like you could put this cake on, like Prineville put it on their golf course, and you could do alfalfa fields and you could do all sorts of stuff. But that's really all gone away.
Mr. Mayor. So, and I think the other point too is that you're able to dispose of this more frequently, which inherently gives you more capacity, right? So you're not going to have to grow the
That's a whole nother
reservoir
factor we haven't
unless-
touched on, is because the building down there was sized for X amount of years, but we're already filling it up in 1 year right now. So this will allow us, as the community grows and the wastes are increased, we still have the ability to process it.
more frequently, however frequently you want to, really, rather than once a year.
Yeah, and I spoke to the public works director for Seaside the other day, and we've seen their process, and they've been doing this for several years, and he's got one farmer that takes it as fast as he can make it.
Okay, so my other question is with this request that you're making tonight, is there any other pieces that this is contingent upon working? Are we, I mean, if we approve this tonight,
There's no approval, there's no approval. This is just. to
Oh, sorry,
educate
yeah.
you So that when the time comes in the next meeting or two, we've already kind of gone down this road and you guys have had some time to research, digest, whatever you want to look at it. But
as I said, that I remember that said report only, but just to clarify though, is this contingent or connected to anything else that we're later going to be hearing about? Is there any strings attached to this? I guess what I'm saying, does that make sense?
yes, this project at this end of the day will probably go on for the next 5 to 10 years and could be 20+ million. So they will, this is just getting us kind of into phase one. When it goes to bid next year, we'll be coming to you with a construction bid approval for a contract to do several $1 million worth of construction work.
So let me rephrase my question. I'm sorry. Can this piece alone go into service and be used, or is it contingent upon other things happening for this to even be able to be used?
With the approximate 2.34, we hope it'll go operational before anything else does. We're trying to treat it as a standalone to get it up and running as quickly as possible. However, with the 12-month plus lead time, we're out a little ways before that day comes.
Okay, thank you, Dave.
Dave, I would just ask, when you come back to us, could you please bring the DEQ's interest rate? The last time I checked for the DEQ loan that we're using was like less than 1%. So if we look at it as a 20-year loan that we take out to be able to cover the cost of essentially refurbishing the entire wastewater treatment facility, I wouldn't say the entire, but portions of it as we work through this, understanding that that cost can be spread out over time so our ratepayers don't get hit with a bigger bill moving forward. So that would be very informative for me.
Just one thing to keep in mind is the entire purchase of this equipment is covered through the 1.9 we're receiving in ARPA.
There we go.
Whatever you want to title that, but that expenditure is prepaid.
Thank you for that.
Any other questions?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Paul?
I just, yeah, I mean, I think that, and what Council President Greisen, I think, was getting at is just, there's a lot of other intangibles that are included. But if you look at it just as a purely cost factor, the ROI is a long-term, and hopefully we have long-term life on this equipment. And
I started a piece of that together where you're going, but it's more of the fact that we don't have that luxury.
We don't have the choice.
yeah, I think that's just what we need to educate going forward, is that there's a lot of changes that are going to happen going forward. So.
This was good discussion to have on the record, I think. Yeah.
Any other? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Austin.
Thank you, Austin.
Thank you, Austin.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
All right, next item, ordinance number 906, fireworks. Mr. Buttman.
Mayor and council, first, there's scrivener's error. It is not May, it is October. Okay, so about 6 months ago, we had a discussion about fireworks. You passed a resolution, and at the time, you'd asked for us to bring something with a little more teeth to council, with not a whole lot of extra guidance as to what that might be. As we're nearing January 1st, we thought it was probably appropriate to kind of dust this off and bring it out so that we could have something a little more on the books than just a resolution, something a little more enforceable. So what we simply did is, because we weren't sure where council wanted to go, if they wanted to strengthen it or loosen things up, we simply rewrote the resolution into an ordinance, which makes it enforceable under a general infraction in the municipal code, which allows the police officers of the city to enforce this a little more than they can resolution. That means that there is actually a financial penalty that is tied to violating fireworks ordinance, assuming it passes. So I think that the big parts of this are what was in the resolution. So I'll kind of go through it to kind of refresh everybody's mind. So long story short, we had a very well-spoken fellow come before council. He expressed his concerns with fireworks being lit off, particularly illegal fireworks being lit off many times a year. Council asked staff to bring some restrictions on that, which we did. So those would be that reinforcing that illegal fireworks are illegal, limiting the use of fireworks at all to times around the most common holidays. So that would be the 1st of the year and the 4th of the year. So we gave some dates on that. We went ahead and we banned them in city parks, streets in city parks and on city property, to make sure that they're not being used in our common areas. It says that when legal fireworks are being used, they're not going to be violating noise ordinances, to kind of toe that balance between limiting them and also permitting them. We ban them on grass, dry vegetated areas and other areas prone to catching fire to limit that threat. And I wrote in here to reserve the right of council to ban them altogether as well, explicitly, to kind of make that clear. If you wish to do that in the future, you could do. And then describe the penalty. That would be a fine of up to $500. One more portion of this that's not addressed in here, and that goes back to not really knowing where you want it to go, is that there was some talk about potentially deputizing the fire district to do certain enforcements. And because there wasn't a lot of guidance on that, that's left out. You can approve this and continue to have that discussion about what that looks like, but that's something that we weren't really sure if you wanted to do, how that might look. So this is both an opportunity to revise this and to look at what that might look like.
And we would have to do that in coordination with the fire board. And we would have to would have to have some various agreements and make sure that everybody understood exactly.
Yeah, and it's a little complicated because we're not sure, right? That brings in DPSST and then if they're enforcing the law, are they an officer? And so not having the direction, we weren't really sure what to do with this. So I brought our best guess, looking for some guidance.
Mayor.
So
So were you saying, Isaac, is, when you say the fire department to be deputized, I mean, I'm kind of thinking if there's, if I have an illegal firework and there's, I burn down my house or my garage or something, there's obviously going to be the firemen are going to be called, but then there should be police, right? Then should come in and then I should receive a citation for causing damage or having illegal fireworks. So there would still be police officers on site to be able to give me my citation, right? Instead of the fire department.
The main reason that we had just an initial conversation with the fire services because of a lack of police officers. Plus they're experts in fire. So our thought would be to send letters to known offenders, letting them know that we were going to enforce this year. And then if they knew that the fire personnel were standing by and could cite them, then, knowing how many police officers we have, we felt like that would further make them not do this.
before we continue, this is a public hearing, so why don't we do the public hearing? Go ahead and open the public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to speak to ordinance number 906, fireworks? There's only 2 people here, so I'm just looking at YouTube.
Or online. Owen?
Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and questions by council. You had your hand up.
I'm just trying to remember our previous conversations. The other reason for involving the fire district, wasn't it that you actually had to witness somebody actually firing off? So in Councilor Santiago's situation, that homeowner wouldn't be cited unless there was a deputized firefighter or a police officer that witnessed the actual lighting and going off of the firework.
The best known alleged offender lived close enough to a fire personnel member that the illegal fireworks would explode at that firefighter's deck level. And so it wasn't a matter of, it wasn't a theoretical, it was, that has happened numerous years. Nothing could be done. But everyone's aware of where everybody lives. And so knowing that there are eyes on that location in particular, and then there were some other known locations as well. So that and the other thing is that they can seize the illegal fireworks. So it's not just the $500 fine, it's that, right. It just provides a lot more tools, but it's not a foregone conclusion that we would be able to utilize the firefighters. That's a much larger conversation, but this is just to kind of iron out the fines and how that process would work, which is in municipal court.
But yes, there was a complaint from the fire department that essentially when they would get called to complaints about fireworks, they would arrive, they would see people shooting off fireworks, perhaps they were illegal, and that they could not issue any kind of citations. They would call the police department would arrive, the fireworks would be gone or used, and the police department would say, sorry, we can't issue citations, we didn't see it happen. So that's kind of the issue there that the fire department had been complaining about, which, makes perfect sense. We totally understand. So it's just a challenging issue. And so that's why that discussion had been brought up.
Isaac, have we spoken to the Scappoose Fire District to see where their feelings are in regards to our ask? Not to say that we're going to incorporate it today or even in the future, just so council has an idea.
We did reach out to them many months ago. I am not going to sit here and speak for the fire district. However, they were tentatively interested potentially in exploring a possibility where this might be a reality.
They were open to it.
At least the conversation has been.
Fully recognizing that it may not be something that could actually be accomplished.
Thank you.
Mr.
Yes.
Mayor. So this actually might be a lot easier. I'm just going to throw this out there. So I think that we should talk to the city prosecutor to see what he would require to prosecute this. If it's just as much as a firefighter being a witness and willing to be a witness, then they can jot down the information like where they saw it, and the police can go and issue the citation when they have time. It's really just a matter of if the prosecutor thinks that they can prosecute it with a witness being a firefighter. It doesn't mean that a firefighter needs to issue the citation.
Right, any other discussion? For me, another option is,
ahead.
can we work with the fire department? I know that we're usually extra duty officers on these type of holidays.
Mhm.
What if one's embedded with a couple of the fire department? He's
But
there to-
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly something we can discuss with them. I think the question right now is.
Yeah, no, I just strategies on,
Yeah, I think from our perspective, we know that this piece would take more conversation and more time. Do we want for you all, just considering the timing of between now and New Year's, is this something you're concerned about having in place before New Year's? Do you feel the resolution sufficient? But we just want to make sure, you had the opportunity at least to pass this before New Year's if that was your preference.
Basically trying to split the two issues apart.
Right.
Say council wanted both of these things, but we weren't really sure. This gives you the opportunity to really reinforce fireworks issue, giving some teeth to it by making there be a fine, making it enforceable, being able to have our officers cite people into court if they do it. That is so, they're not necessarily, they don't have to necessarily be tied together.
Part of the reason that we bifurcated is because we would need to negotiate it with their board, and we would also need to negotiate insurance coverage with CIS to make sure that all of that was in place. So we went with kind of, I'm not going to call it a parallel track because one track will take longer than the other, but we went with a bifurcated track so that we could get the enforceability clearly into our code, which you guys can do really easily. And then as far as working through those other issues, because I think we're the first jurisdiction that would have partnered with the fire organization sort of enforcement that I'm aware of. I couldn't find any other examples. We're going to need to kind of that through that process.
Mr. Mayor, may I make a suggestion that we follow up on what I said though, because there's a lot of entanglement there with the fire department that I didn't get the feeling, and I could be wrong, but I didn't get the feeling the fire department or fire district was thrilled about being involved in enforcement actions. That's not something that they do in the state, from what I understand Chief Pritchard saying. But if we can just talk to our city prosecutor and see what he thinks is going to be needed to successfully prosecute somebody that's cited, and he thinks that a fire, I think we still should have the conversation. Are they willing to be a witness? Because they are going to be called to be a witness in court. And if they're willing to just be a witness like any other witness, saying, yes, I observed so-and-so at such and such date of time at this location, then that may be all that is needed. Yes, the police department, if they're busy, and they will be busy on the 1st or New Year's Eve and the 4th of July, they might have to go do follow-ups over the course of a week or whatever. But if we can get the fire department to agree to be witnesses and take down the information and do just a short little training on that piece, then I think I don't think we would be as entangled with them and asking them to do something that they're perhaps not comfortable really doing.
Yeah, we can certainly have that conversation.
Thank you.
all right, do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Counselor Pulling,
I move that council adopt ordinance number, oh, it doesn't say on there, does it?
6.
906. An ordinance regulating fireworks in the city of Scappoose, amending Scappoose Municipal Code Title 8, creating Chapter 8.26 fireworks and rescinding Resolution 2211 as written.
Hearing a motion to adopt ordinance number 906, is there a second?
Second it.
All right, second by Counselor Santiago.
And I would just note, having a further conversation about the, direction with the fire department later on would be good, whether it's that or the prosecution, whatever direction would be just nice to have a conversation, I think, at least.
All right, so ordinance number 906 is going on to first reading. Ordinance number 906, ordinance regulating fireworks in the city of Scappoose, amending Scappoose Municipal Code Title 8, creating chapter 8.26 fireworks and rescinding resolution number 22-11. It's on first reading. It'll come back at our next regular council meeting for discussion and a vote. Next item 7, discussion on council's December meeting schedule. Manager Raines.
Yes, Mayor and Council, I just wanted to see if you all were interested in amending your regular meeting schedule for December, just simply to move a little further away from the holidays, just so there's no conflicts in anyone's schedules. So the 2 meetings would be on the 5th and 12th.
Also, any concerns? It's good.
Okay.
Motion needed with us, we set them.
We'll do it.
All right, announcements, calendar. This Thursday at noon, the Economic Development Committee meeting. And at 6 p.m. Parks and Rec Committee meeting on the 27th, a Planning Commission meeting. Next city council meeting is November 7th. At the work session at 6 p.m., city council meeting at 7. Then a planning commission meeting at 7 p.m. on the 10th. City offices will be closed on the 11th for Veterans Day. Our November Economic Development Committee meeting is on the 17th at noon with Park and Rec that same night at 6 p.m. And our second city council meeting is on the 21st, work session 6 p.m., city council meeting at 7. Alex, do you have anything?
Just real briefly, I just wanted to let you know I did attend the homecoming game in September with Council President Greisen, and that the police department does plan to do a Halloween event. I believe they're still going to do a drive-through from 4 to 6 on Halloween on Monday. So we'll have some information we can post on social media about that soon. But if you're around and interested, you can always drive through. There'll be several employees helping out with that. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Sir Miller.
Sorry for being late. So City Manager Rain sent out a invite to everyone to, well, it was more like a poll, a doodle poll for the radio presentation by Tate. And it included for options November 9th, Wednesday, 10th, Thursday, 29th, Tuesday, 30th, Wednesday, and December 1st. So far, when I last checked it, 28 people had responded and there was obviously a majority that wanted the 29th. But I think at least some of our council members already went in and marked their dates that worked for them. But if you haven't done that yet, I'd really appreciate if you do that because we do have to firm up the date by the end of this week and establish the venue, which at this time it's looking like it's going to be Meriwether Place in St. Helens. Thank you.
Councilor Bowling.
This is the last city council meeting before the election, so just go out and vote. I know we have a couple people running, they're in this room, so I just wish all you luck and hope that everybody goes out and votes for who they want to, so.
Council President.
I have a couple exciting updates that correspond with the school district, as well as with our city. The first one is Grant Watts Elementary held their annual fun run, kind of like a jogathon, a couple Fridays ago. It was very successful. But we had Chloe and Alec out there from the police department the entire day. And as someone who was there from start to finish for the event, it was just wonderful to see them engaging with our youth and encouraging them and running at times and passing out bracelets per lap. So I grabbed some good pictures. Just want to get approval that kids' faces in there could be publicized, and I'll pass those along to the city. But I've been very pleased with Chief Lugal and his interest in the police department corresponding with our youth. They're often just driving by, parking, and entering a lot of our school buildings, just trying to get them more familiar with our force, hopefully thinking they're not as scary. One of the really exciting things happening with our school district is we are going to be opening a Scappoose Early Learning Center, or a district housed preschool. And it's called Little Lilu, which means little wolf. And it's housed in Grant Watts Elementary, and our mascot is the gray wolf. And there is a classroom of 18 students. 3 are tuition-based spots, but 15 go along with the preschool promise grant. And this is income-based qualifications free to those families. There's 3 staff members. I feel very sad for the Grace Christian community, because we grabbed their head, teacher. She's going to be our main early learning director, Cindy Overstreet. There will be a lead teacher and a teacher assistant, so 3 staff members. You can go to the district website and click on departments under student achievement and learn more about that preschool program that we finally are getting into our school district. Another connection with the school district, more globally, it was Indigenous Peoples Day just recently, last week, and it was a statewide in-service day for all school districts this last Friday. And our school district had our district librarian holding throughout the week last week. Her library sessions kicked off with a book that really touched upon Indigenous people and some cultures. So students K through 6 in our district were exposed to some of those traditions and cultures, and learning about Indigenous Native people and what that means for Scappoose. And then our district director of student achievement, she held an event on Friday during a no school day at the Grant Watts campus. Read a picture book. Families were involved, not just students. And then we watched a video about some Native dancing, went outside, learned about the tradition of dream catcher making, and children made dream catchers. So I have 3 new dream catchers in my house. But this just really got me thinking that we have so much potential as a city to really advocate for our Native history and acknowledge Indigenous Peoples Day. And I think that it would be a great opportunity for our Parks and Rec Committee, just another recreation event. I know that they've talked a lot about, adding more recreation into their work on top of what they already do. And I would just love for council to be thoughtful in our next goal setting session. I know that group has so much to do with the Parks Master Plan, but maybe pushing for a more Scappoose community-based experience, with our historical society and our library, and doing something that acknowledges Indigenous Peoples Day and our Native history here in Scappoose. Whoa. Right. So the last thing, I'm tired, and it's not because I'm a mom. Probably is, but I'm just tired of so much us versus them negativity. And I feel this a lot with the school board. And I made a comment the other day, and just for them to hear something positive that's happening, I think just brings just a breath of fresh air to leaders. And I just feel like there's so many people that see something and they don't say something. And then there's some people that see something and they say a lot of something. And I just wish that we would go through the proper channels of contacting our leaders and our staff here at the city. It's produced in the newspaper and on our app on how to contact us up here. We're liaisons to different committees. I think we all have constituents that know our interests or know how we can help. And I just think when, people step up to the mic, or they give us a call on the phone, or send us an email, that's so much more productive. But when we function kind of in our own personal vacuum and make assumptions without checking in, I think that's really where barriers are happening. And for those of us that use social media as an outlet to share our opinions, I just encourage us to use, kindness, and sometimes listening is more important than speaking. So some general comments about how we engage as citizens with each other. And I think at the end of the day, we all just want what's best for our community and our families. And we're not going to get there if we just continue to not be willing to come together.
Wasowski.
Sure thing. Last week, I was able to go to the Port of Columbia County's State of the Port event. It was very informative to hear the work that they've been doing over the last year, but also I appreciate and recognize that they have been met with some challenges as well. So Sean Clark has been in the executive director's role for, I think, almost exactly a year now. So I feel like they're in good hands with Sean and the work that he's doing with the port. Also was able to attend the League of Oregon Cities annual conference with Mayor Burge. It was about 2 weeks ago. Couple of things, sessions were very informative. I'd highly recommend for council members to entertain going in the future. One session that I attended was in regards to collaborating and partnerships within special districts, counties, and cities. So our challenges are shared across the state when coming together with multiple governing agencies, but very informative and looking on relationship building. Another very good session was in regards to our youth. And I know that we had spoken about having maybe more youth engagement through our city council. I was fortunate enough to sit in a session with Oregon City, Happy Valley, and I believe it was Lake Oswego. Yeah, it was Mayor Buck. Yeah. They highlighted their programs where it was just a variety of different ways in which they had council representation or committee representation through their youth, or and it was just, I think, highlighting that we need to prepare for new leaders to be able to come up through the ranks in local city government. And I think that it's a valuable opportunity for us to continue to look at ways that we can engage with our high schoolers, specifically with that age group. After that, I actually had a great conversation with Senator Ron Wyden, and just speaking to him on some of the work that he's done for rural Oregon over the last year. One of the big opportunities that he and I would like to work with his staff on is actually hosting a youth annual town hall here at Scappoose. It's something that his team has been pushing for, and he said that he would be committed to being attending if we were to be able to host one for him. So I think that that's a great opportunity. Spoke to Titus Tomlinson. Miss Rains might remember, it was our point of contact at U of O for the RARE program. I think we're about 6 years since our last RARE student, so might be an opportunity to get some additional hands on that 50-year plan moving forward or something along those lines. Also spoke to the folks over at Clean Water State Revolving Fund. Got some great loan application and information for y'all over there in Public Works. Also with Deanna Quimbley at our USDA, there's plenty of good loans coming through them as well for water and wastewater treatment upgrades. And then we could pass this one on to Lori with the, let's see, this is the Department of Land and Conservation, DLCD, thank you. They are also transportation grants, so transportation planning grants. So as we're looking at the 50-year, that might be another way to couple of this all together. Long story short, I think that as representatives of our local community, we need to be looking at creative ways to be able to fund a lot of these improvements that we desperately need, but also that our community members have identified. We know that our tax base is what really sets our budget, and then that sets what we are able to do for the year. And so if, you know, I know that folks may not want to see Scappoose grow exponentially, and I completely understand that. But if we are going to be trying to identify ways to address our capital needs and also improvements that we want to see within the amenities of our parks, we have to be thinking of ways of how we'll fund that. So I was very happy to see ways that we could potentially be creating dollars or finding dollars to be able to invest into our city. So with that, I think I can share it on.
So McHugh.
Thanks for those reports. Those excellent reports. I'd just like to say, I really like what's happening in our schools and some of the things that we're doing. I appreciate the police department being involved. nobody makes a better impression than police do with young people. And the more they can be involved, I think it's just going to be hugely positive. I also have 2 grandchildren. I feel very good about the type of education they're getting right now, and their teachers and schools seem to be moving very functionally. I would like to see, us as much as possible to be engaged without getting in the way, but where we can participate, where we can help, and because I think it's important that we have a really good relationship with our schools and our school board, and I think we're moving on the right track there. I think democracy is kind of an unwieldy system. We kind of we step on each other's toes and things, and I'm pretty good at that. And what I really appreciate about our council and really the other elected people I'm around too, I can't think of anybody that's not. Their heart's in the right place, and I think that's what's really important, that we move forward as positive we can, and whatever differences we've got, it's nothing personal. So that's it.
Can I, Pete, we actually have a 3rd grade group of students coming for a field trip in a couple weeks or next week. Remember I had emailed you about
Yeah, I
that?
did,
So we've got some of that stuff coming up too.
Yeah, you're
at
going
the
to come
school.
here into the Watts house, right?
Library. Yeah, they're hoping for the Watts house, but yeah.
Great. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Santiago.
So Councilor McHugh just reminded me of something, and I wanted to give kudos to the city. First of all, the Facebook page post of all the new incoming police officers and giving the backstory. I really enjoyed that, just to hear where they're coming from and just makes them feel like, no, they're real people, right? They're real people in our community. So that was really nice. So a couple of things. Councilor Greisen mentioned about having more historical, maybe I did have a conversation with the Parks and Recs chair, Kara, and we did talk about historical signage, that, there is that signage is part of the goals for them, and we also approve those goals. So we would like to see, I agree with her, more historical signage about our culture, the native of here, of Scappoose. Which brings me into another topic having with her is if I'm not talking about committee members, but the public, you guys are more than welcome to come to any of the meetings, I'm sure any other committee meetings. But if you have a suggestion, just to let you know, you can come and share your suggestions to the council. And if we feel that it's something that the Parks and Recs or any other committee can take upon, just as a goal, then we can discuss that with that subcommittee, with that committee. Because we find it that they are approached with ideas and there's really nothing that they can do. So just to kind of streamline things, it'd be best if you bring it to council and then council can discuss that with the committee, just to streamline things. Okay. Couple of things. Another thing is Councilor Bryson and I attended a meeting on the 12th, and it was the update. It was a community engagement team, and it was by the school district. Is that correct?
There's a requirement by the state that the school districts in the state have to. Go ahead. Yep.
So it was formative. We just giving our input. So that was really nice to connecting with the that program. And so hope to get more feedback and information from them. Another thing is I'm not able to attend this, but if I'm wondering who's going to this small city network meeting and on Friday, November 4th at 11 a.m. in Seaside. And so I wish I can go, but I won't be in town. So if any council members are going to be there, let me know. I would love to know the recap on what happened. And let's see, another thing too is unfortunately I will not be present in the next 2 meetings. The 7th, I could possibly be remote. I will be in the East Coast. And then the December meeting, I will be remotely again. So just to let you know. And I think the last thing is vote. Vote.
All right, so I think Brandon heard the league conference pretty well. Of course, it was a good conference. I wish more council members and staff would go. When it comes to parks, when you're talking about history, I know that Mike Sykes and I had a conversation about kind of our dream of having a longhouse built somewhere in Scappoose that showed the native history, like as a museum, community center type thing. 'Cause those were the homes that were built by the Chinook tribes. And it was why I was also really thought it was really important that when the county came through and we talked to them about putting up historical signage or like they've got at the other trailheads, that ours at Turtec also highlights that the area that you're seeing from that trailhead is the trading grounds of the Chinook tribes. When it was summer and the lowlands were dry, that's where they would be. So, you know, I always been really strongly in supportive of honoring and memorializing that history. So I like that idea. Still, I hope to, carry forward the idea of the longhouse. Maybe Mike and I will bring it back up. And other than that, good meeting. Nothing else on the agenda.
Short meeting.
Meeting adjourned. Time.